Hello everyone and welcome to this lecture, and my name is Burhanuddin, and in this lecture we are going to learn about the Android lifecycle. So let's get started and open the Android Studio. So let's just create a new project. Close this one, click on Start Android Studio Project. Let's just select an empty activity, click on Next, and I will name it as Android Lifecycle. Okay, so click on Finish, and let's just wait for the Gradles to be built successfully. Okay, just close the tip of the day. Okay, so now my Gradles are built and my project is ready. Okay, so first of all, if you are not able to see this project pane, just make sure that from this little drop down Android is selected, then go to Java, your package name and the main activity. So now Android lifecycle, we all know that as you have studied in the theoretical part, that the first method that whenever user click on the application, the first method that gets called is onCreate method. So first of all, let's just try to call this method. So we are going to use for this specific lecture the logs. I'm talking about, of course, about the logcat. We are going to use this log for passing the message on the creations and on the destructions of the activity, and we will be able to see those messages right here in the logs. We actually use this logcat in order to debug our application, but we can also use this logcat to pass certain information, or we can also set certain important information during the creation of the application to know that whether a certain part of our application is working perfectly or not. So we are going to use it in this lecture. So first of all, let's just try to create a message for this particular method, that is onCreate method, that whenever we open the application, this onCreate method gets called. That message should be shown in the log area. So for displaying the messages in the log, we just need to type log and then click on, as you can see, the autocomplete feature of the Android shows us that log came from android.util package. Okay, so let's just click on dot and you can access all the methods of the log. So for displaying the message, I am going to display it as information. You can use any other. I will show you every method that every way or every log method that we can use in order to display the message. So for now, let's just type I, and as you can see, this type I specifies the information. That is, as you can see right here in the logs, right here in this drop down, we have certain things written over here that are verbose, debug, information, warn, error and assets. So we can use this all things to display the message. For example, for I, we can use this I to show the information. Okay, as you can see here, there is an compile time error showing me here, and which shows me that the class android.util.log is not important. As you can as you will see, the little plus icon right here, and when we click on it, it will expand the imports for us. And whenever I click on alter plus enter on this log, as you can see now, the android.util.log is automatically imported for me. Okay, so now let's just dot I for the information, and this method needs takes two parameters. The first one is the tag. We will talk about it in a bit, and the second one is the actual message that we want to pass. Now, what is the tag? The tag is like an identifier or unique object that we use to identify our message from the dozens of other messages that are shown in the log when the application is up and running. Okay, so always remember that pass something meaningful and unique inside this tag value, so you can identify that value later on easily. Okay, so as this method is a part of the Android lifecycle, I will suggest you to write Android lifecycle, and always remember, write everything in the caps. Okay, so Android lifecycle. Okay, and for the message, as this is the onCreate method, I will say okay, onCreate method is called. Okay, so let's just put the semicolon to end this line and let's just run the application. I will choose my Pixel 2 API and APD, and let's just see while it's let's just wait while the emulator is getting ready. Okay, so as my application is now up and running, so let's just open the logcat, and as you can see, there are dozens of other messages here, but as we want to identify our particular tag, what I do is just copy this thing and paste it right here. And as you can see now, if I filter this to the info, as you can see now, here is our tag, and it says that onCreate method is called. So one thing we have noticed that there are a lot of different other things named as Android lifecycle, like this or package name. So whenever in the next time, whenever I want to call this type of thing, I make sure that I change the name. So let's just change it to what can we do? Activity cycle maybe, in the caps, of course, or we can only say tag. Okay, my tags. Okay, so now let's move on to the second method of the Android lifecycle, that is onStart method, which occurs right after the onCreate method. So let's just type, okay, in the small, on with the capital S start, and as you can see now, the autocomplete feature shows me the protected void onStart method, which came from the app compact activity. So let's just select and press enter on the keyboard to select the onStart method, and it shows us that it comes from onStart activity. And as you can see here, that this method and this method is getting overridden. So this method is basically getting overridden from this super class, and the super class is the app compact activity. Inside this app compact activity, there will be onStart and onCreate method, which we are overriding in our main activity. So let's just press the control command and click on the app compact activity in order to open that class file. And now let's just search for onCreate method. Okay, as you can see now, here is the onCreate method which we are overriding in our main activity, and let's just search for onStart, and as you can see, here is the onStart method that we want to override in our main activity. So let's just close this file. Okay, so now on the onStart method, I want to show that onStart method is called on the logs. So I will type log I can write directly and hit no. So I'll type log.I. Okay, so for the tag, I'll specify the same one, my tag, and for the message, I will type onStart method is called, and at the semicolon at the end to end the line. Now let's just run the application and see what's happened. So as my application is now running, let's just open the logcat and search for my tags. And as you can see now, two messages are getting displayed. onCreate method is called and the onStart method is called. Just try to remember the sequence in which these things are getting called, because these messages will be shown up right here on the base on the base of the sequence they will be called in the application. So the sequence of the Android lifecycle is maintained. You can also check that with the time mentioned here, there is a difference in second. Okay, so the next method will be, let's just shorten this a little bit and keep this open. Okay, so the next method will be onResume method. So we'll do it the same thing for that, onResume. Okay, and then as you may notice, this method came from fragment activity, not from the app compact activity. onResume. So this means that the app compact activity must be extending a fragment activity. So let's just check that out. App compact activity, and as you can see right here, this app compact activity class extends fragment activity. So indirectly, the onResume method from the fragment activity comes to app compact activity, from which we are extending it to the main activity. So if we search for it right here on onResume, you can see that onResume method is right here, which we are going to extend and implement in our main activity. Close these all things, and I will specify the same tag. So just type log.i, and I'll type my tags here, and then onResume method is called, and the semicolon to end this line. Now this method will be called after the onStart method. So let's just reinstall our application, and as you can see now, onCreate method was called, onStart method was called, and then after onResume method was called. Let's just remove the space to make it in a good sequence. Okay, so after the onResume method, the next method that occurs in the Android lifecycle is onPause method. That method that gets called whenever we closes our application. So let's just implement that onPause method. This method also get extended from the fragment activity. Okay, so let's just type log.i and pass the tag as my tags, and the message would be onPause method is called. Okay, put the semicolon. Let's just capitalize this R to make it look good. Okay, so let's just run the application now. Now, as you may have noticed, the onCreate method was called, onStart method was called, onResume method was called, but onPause method was not called because my application is still up and running. So in order to call the onPause method, I need to close this application. So if I press this back icon, you can see that onPause method is called again. Okay, so what happened when I reopen the application? So here is my application. Whenever I open it again, you can see that again the onCreate method was called, onStart method was called, and onResume method was called. So let's just try and implement another method in the Android lifecycle activity, that is onRestartMethod. restart. Now, this activity will occur whenever the application is removed from the memory. Okay, so let's just log I my text, and then I will write on restart method is called. Okay, so put the semicolon at the end, and let's just run this application and see what happens. Okay, so first, okay, so no problem. As you can see now, onCreate, onStart and onResume method are called. Now if I press this back icon, onPause method is called. Okay, and when I click on the app again in order to open it, onResume method is getting called onCreate, onStart and onResume. But still, the onRestart method is not getting called. That is because I was completely destroying this application from the memory when I press the back icon. But if I press the home button, then the onPause method will call, and if I try to again open this application in the memory, as you can see now, instead of onCreate method, onRestart method is getting called, then onStart method is getting called, and onResume method is getting called. This proves us that onCreate method gets called only once whenever the application is loaded for the first time in the memory. Whenever we are pressing the back button, the application is getting destroyed and the memory is getting occupied by another application inside the RAM management system, okay, or by the any process handler, okay. But whenever we press the home button, the application was not getting destroyed and the memory was still occupied by the application. That's why whenever we again reopen the application, then the restart method was called instead of the onCreate method. So let's move on to the final method of this Android lifecycle, that is onDestroy. Again, this method inherits from the app compact activity. So let's just log it, and log.I, I'll put my tags, and for the message I'll type here onDestroy method is called. Now you can see that how handy is the log feature. Whenever we are debugging our application, or whenever our application is getting crashed and we are unable to find what is the error, then what we do after that, in every method that we use in our application, or after every line that we see as a suspect for causing the error, we put the log statement after that, so that we can check that up till which line our code is working completely fine, and on which line the actual error is getting occurred, so that we can solve that part of the code and get our application up and running. Okay, so now let's just test this onDestroy method. So let's just first clean this log by clicking on this dustbin icon right here. So as you can see, by hovering on it, it shows us that clear log cat. Okay, so let's just click on that, and as you can see, my log cat is clear now. So let's just run the application. It's getting installed, and as you can see now, my application was getting opened for the first time. So the onCreate method was called, and after that onStart method was called, and after that onResume method was called. But if I press the back icon right now, what will happen? You may have guessed it right, that onPause method will call. Okay, and then after the onPause method, onDestroy method will be called, as the application will be removed from the memory. Okay, so let's just click on the back icon, and as you can see now, onPause method is called, and after that onDestroy method is called. So if I try to open the application again, you can see now onCreate method is called, onStart method is called, and then onResume method is called. Okay, but let's just try to open, not closing the application and clicking on the home button. So what will happen when I try to click on the home button? As you can see now, onPause method is called, but onDestroy method is not called yet because my application is still up and running inside the memory. But if I do this thing, that I click on the recent apps icon and I closed or removed the application from the memory, the onDestroy method is getting called now. Okay, so let's just try to reopen the application. So onCreate method is called, start method is called, and resume method is called. So let's just minimize the application. So onPause method is called. So now let's just open the app again, and as you can see now, instead of onCreate method, onRestart method gets called, onStart method gets called, and onResume method gets called. Okay, so this is how the Android lifecycles work, and this is how the tags work. Okay, so here is a little task for you at the end of this lecture, that what you have to do is, instead of using try to use other filters or other things available in the logcat, that are verbose, debug, warn, error, and assert. Try to display message of these different methods getting called at different times into these different others, what you can say, different other filters. Okay, so let me explain you one of the onCreate method. I will show this inside the verbose. Okay, so just log.v, and as you can see now, okay, now if I run the application again, as you can see now, as I am in the onPause filter, onStart method is getting called and onResume method is getting called, but still onCreate method is getting called, but it is still not displaying me that message because it is residing inside the verbose. So when I change the filter to the verbose, you can see that onCreate method is getting called. Okay, so let's just try to play around with these tags, and see you in the next lecture.